In this series, we've gone back to basics, looking at the fundamental rules that makes rooms work, or not. And those rules are there for you to use at home, for you to get the interior design scheme you've always wanted, saving you a lot of hassle, a lot of worry, and ultimately a lot of money. It's human instinct. Whenever something goes wrong, the first thing we do is scuttle back to our burrows. In a busy, stressful life full of responsibilities, the home is the only place that we have where we can exercise complete control. This program is all about the things that make a house a home. In just about every room, there's an extremely fine line between chaos and order. And it's that final lap of interior design, that moment when you move your stuff back into the room, the stuff you use every day, or the stuff that means something to you, that's when it always seems to go wrong. One of the first things you need to consider is where to put your furniture. In our design laboratory here, in a secret and very remote location, we've recreated the average British room. Small and rather unlovely, isn't it? But it's in here that I'm going to prove basic points such as, how does a room arranged like this affect our mood compared to a room arranged like this? Come on, you two. Right, coffee table out. A designer will always think about the layout of furniture from the outset. Nothing is left to chance. Now, doesn't that look better? And that is because humans feel happier when surrounded by symmetry. But more of that later. The second aspect to consider is display. I'm going to show you a few hard and fast golden rules that makes the art of showing off your bits and bobs and your nicks and knacks as successful and painless as possible. As you know by now, in this series we apply the rules of design to the kind of houses the majority of us actually live in. British houses are considerably smaller than other European countries. In fact, only Finland and Germany have smaller abodes. It's little wonder then that so many of our houses are overflowing with our much valued possessions. This entire house is a, well, treasure trove. It's simply overflowing with toys, personal keepsakes, and things picked up from around the world. And as for the bedroom, come and join me in a moment of well-earned self-satisfaction. Okay. I know that our homes have cluttered, untidy corners, but nothing like this room, or in fact, this house. To be fair, it's not so much that this space is untidy, it's the fact that it's actually been very, very badly edited. There's some very nice things in here, but there's also a lot of things that, okay, I know they exist. I know they're necessary for day-to-day living, like grey socks and pants, but they don't really need to be there in your face the whole time. Crucial thing with a space like this is obviously to think in terms of storage and organising the things that you need, the things that you want, but crucially, I think, the things that you want to look at. Don't forget that bedrooms always have a fixed viewpoint. You're on the bed the whole time, so you're looking in one direction. It's not like any other space where you're wandering around and you see things from different angles. A bed, you're a captive audience. So it's very important to work out the axis, where you're looking. That is the focus, that's the focal point, and you need something there that's going to really delight the eye. Suntan lotion, dirty hairbrush, dusty old trinket box, somebody's ex-teddy bear. I don't think my eyes are satisfied at this moment. This is nice over here. Look, It's an altar to the ancient goddess of laundry, and it is a crying shame. Underneath these fleeces, these T-shirts, all of these bits and pieces, there's an absolutely beautiful set of shelves. Might have come from a locker room or something. You've got these rather roughly carved in Roman numerals. If that was organised in such a way that your eye was looking at that, not at this, well, its existence is vindicated. Everything in this room is fighting for attention, which is a shame. It's a bedroom. It should be somewhere that's serene, should be somewhere that's relaxing. But at the moment, you can't separate the wheat from the chaff. And yet you look around and there's some really very, very nice objects in here. There's an ethnic embroidery over there, there's a lovely Mexican mirror over there, but it's just all totally covered by this miasma of stuff.
What's interesting is that we do actually get used to the environment that we live in. So, for example, Americans come to Britain and they say, oh, your rooms, they're so small, they're so cluttered. They find the way we live rather intense, overstimulating. On the other hand, the British come to the American houses and the room seems so large and so empty. It's a little like living in a warehouse. It's a little disquieting because we're not used to having that much space in our environments. So we adapt to the level of stimulation that we're in.
The people who live here have clearly grown accustomed to living with clutter, but being used to it doesn't make it nice. I want to create a room that is more pleasing to the eye. The most common mistake people make with bedrooms is that we tend to cram too many functions into them, so that we fulfill none of them very well. Dressing and storage mean bulky, often ugly pieces of furniture that clutter the space. Anyone that feels that they can get rid of everything they own and start again, create a minimalist, controlled space with the right vase here and the right magazine rack there, is lying to themselves. Our lives are full of experiences, and the things we surround ourselves with are testimony to those experiences. So here, there's bits and pieces that were picked up on travel, on holiday. The fact that there's a child in the family. All of these things come together to make a life. That should be respected, but that doesn't mean it needs to look rubbish. So where do you start? When you walk into a room for the first time, what do you notice first? I mean, a fireplace, a window. These are immovable architectural elements. They're there to stay. They are focal points around which you will have to plan the arrangement of your furniture. It is astonishing how many people buy furniture on impulse without really thinking about the overall design. So how do you decide the best layout for a room? Let's go back to basics. Let's imagine this clear space as the first time home of Mr. and Mrs. John. And excitingly, today they're moving in. So their first job is to arrange their furniture to suit the room and suit the way they want to use it. Left to their own devices, completely unguided, it's going to be interesting to see what our Mr. and Mrs. John do. Yeah, you see, that's interesting. They're making a big fuss about where to put the television. It's interesting, this is exactly what I'd expect. People just go into a room and move the furniture around in a very, very willy-nilly fashion. And I bet you, by the time that's finished, that will actually be changed again in a couple of months as some kind of furniture therapy. Not, I think, to get it right, but simply just as a change for change's sake. They should have thought about it beforehand. Congratulations, gentlemen. There we go.
Thank you.
Light refreshment. Marvellous, marvellous.
Salut.
Now, obviously, Mr. and Mrs. John are a slightly unconventional couple, although they have made the most basic, and I'm afraid to say the most conventional mistake in terms of laying out the furniture. When a designer starts to look at a scheme for a room, they will always consider exactly where the furniture goes before starting, because it affects everything, rather than, as Mr. and Mrs. John have done, just kind of work it out as you go along, off the cuff, on the hoof. So if this is wrong, then what's right? Not bad, actually nudging perfect, but why? First of all, let's explain why Mr. and Miss... Oh, thank you, Mr. John. Oh, and Mrs. John as well. Let's explain why Mr. and Mrs. John have a Union Jack right in the middle of their living room. It's made up of two sorts of lines, good lines and naughty lines. The right angle straight lines that connect the focal points like the fireplace and the window are good lines. The diagonal lines going from corner to corner are very, very naughty lines. And unfortunately, Mr. and Mrs. John decided to arrange all of their furniture around the naughty lines. I, however, have used the straight right-angled lines to create a near perfectly symmetrical arrangement I think works perfectly. As a rule, we carbon-based life forms tend to prefer buildings and rooms that are specifically designed to be symmetrical. But why is that?
Symmetry is biologically important. If you've got a symmetrical face, it means it's got a pretty good genetic basis, that there aren't a lot of imperfections, so to speak, in the genetic coding. And it